Planning and Zoning Commission is officially open at 5 minutes past 7. We'll hear the minutes.
So everybody has a copy of the minutes. If everyone approves the minutes, we'll need a motion to accept.
Actually, you can,
I'll motion to accept the minutes as written.
now second it.
Okay.
So it's now for favor. Actually, though, if we don't have any changes to minutes, we can just say the minutes will be accepted as
Oh, we can just say if they're accepted, okay.
written.
We can open. Treasurer's report, the balance is exactly the same as it was at the last meeting, $287.11.
Okay, we accepted as read.
Okay.
No expenses since then. Okay, so this is a public meeting, not a public hearing, which means people don't make comments and do not participate unless we call on them. The Julietta City Council sent the Smith subdivision back to us so that we could review the letter from Mark Snyder, the attorney, and the packet of information that he sent to us, stating they have now met the conditions for approval of the subdivision. The council requested that planning and zoning go over the information to make sure that it meets what we intended to have done. And so we will not address the issue of Old Main Street since, as Mr. Snyder said, it was sent on to the City Council for a request for validation of the road. And Mr. Snyder has requested that he be allowed to present information on the proposed subdivision. So we'll give him 10 minutes to do so. And nobody will interrupt him, then he'll have the uninterrupted time to talk, and I think that'd be a lot easier than having questions with him. But as you go along, you won't be interrupted. So after that, we should be discussing the proposal, then if we need information, we shall ask for it. We've had copies of the packet of information to go over previous to the meeting. And then we'll ask questions that we may have after you finish your presentation. And after we come to a decision, a letter will be written to the Julietta City Council stating our findings, and a copy of the letter will be emailed to Mr. Snyder and Mr. Smith. So now you have the floor, Mr. Snyder.
Okay, you're limiting me to 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, you're just going over what we already had sent.
Well, no, not necessarily. I think there's some information that should be.
Well, it's in the packet, right? Because that's all we were supposed to do is look at that packet.
That's all you were supposed to do?
To see if it met that our what we requested. I mean, we aren't supposed to have any changes since then.
Well, that's some additional information.
Well,
I prepared, essentially, well, let me just start.
it's about what you had in the packet, right?
It's about what I
Okay,
had.
yes.
Absolutely. I'm
That's what I was wondering.
elaborating a little
Okay.
bit. So, since I'm limited to 10 minutes, I'm going to cut out the first part, unfortunately. I wanted to put this in context, because I think that every story, every case, every situation requires that you understand how all this came about. And I think it's important in making a decision. So I was going to discuss the original stumbling block here, which was the boundary line dispute, and how that boundary line dispute came about, why there was one, and how it was resolved. And if you're not interested in that information, I'll just pass over it.
Well, you said the boundary line information was solved in your letter.
It was. It was, however, it has something to do with the ultimate decisions that are made. And, you know, the road validation, Old Main Street validation ties directly in here. And I'll explain why. And you mentioned that you're not going to give any consideration to that. But I think that they're so inextricably tied that whether Old Main Street is a public street to its intersection with Riverview Drive is a very important decision, and there's potential liability for the city based upon that decision. And I'll get right to that. If Old Main Street is not a public street to the intersection with Riverview Drive, there are 3 property owners who are landlocked. So essentially, the city, if it determines Old Main Street ends at the section line, you've made a decision that landlocks 3 property owners because their easement to their property is described to a point at the end of Riverview Drive. So that's an important decision for the city to make on that basis. Now, I don't know that those 3 property owners are going to file a lawsuit or their successors are going to have a problem. From a practical standpoint, they haven't had any problem. But what I'm talking about is legally landlocked, which means they don't have a valid easement to their property unless Old Main Street exists to the intersection with Riverview Drive, as the surveyor who surveyed and described their easement described it. So there are only 2 ways for the city to relieve itself of that potential liability. One is to validate Old Main Street to the intersection with Riverview Drive. That, of course, makes their easement valid, and they're no longer landlocked. The other way would be to approve Jim Smith's subdivision, wherein he has proposed dedicating a 50-foot wide road entirely on his property. Now that his property line has been established, which is approximately in the center of existing paved Old Main Street, he's willing to make his 50-foot right-of-way for that dedication exists partly on existing Old Main Street and partly on his property that's hillside, essentially. And it was indicated previously that that would be acceptable. P&Z indicated that if he could dedicate the 50 feet entirely on his property, then that would be okay. Essentially, you know, I've got a document here for you to look at and maybe ask me some questions, but it really boils down to 3 choices that the city has at this point. It's like the old game show, door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. Except unlike the game show, I'm going to tell you what's behind each of those doors. So you can decide, I'm not going to try and convince you what to do, or what's the right thing to do. I'm just going to lay it out for you. And if we feel the city makes the wrong decision, then we have recourse if that's appropriate. But I think the best thing for me to do is just to lay out the facts and let you folks, of course, decide which of these 3 choices you want to make. And it boils down to, let me just give you my piece of paper here. How am I doing on my 10 minutes?
You've got 4 minutes to go.
I've got some pretty good visual images here.
We've already got those, I think.
Okay. You know, I'm of the opinion you can never have too much information, but
Oh, we can, because it makes it very hard to find the details.
that's what, well, you can have, if that would be information that's not useful.
Yes.
So you got my letter wherein I went through each of the city's conditions.
Yes.
And you've looked at that, so we
Yes.
don't need to go through that. I would have been better organized if I knew I was only gonna have 10 minutes. So this first document, those are your 3 options. Option A, option B, and option C. read all that?
Yes?
Well, what do you think about option B?
You're doing the talking now. We aren't doing talking till you're through.
Okay. Well, I have some other information here that you may want to take a look at your leisure. There's a lot of, so I specialize in this area of law, including public road law. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what a public road is and what it isn't. And whether, if the city determines that something's a public road, does that mean the city has to maintain it? That's a misconception. They do not.
If it's only a public right-of-way, we don't have to.
Pardon me?
A public right-of-way, any land dedicated, open to the public, and under the jurisdiction of a public highway agency, where the public highway agency has no obligation to construct or maintain said right-of-way for vehicular traffic. That's from the state statute.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Oh, lost something.
I did.
See something silver crash.
Could have been a
Oh, paperclip, here you go.
Yeah, leave that there. All right, I guess that's the end of my presentation. Bing, look at that. Just like a hard-boiled egg.
Yeah. There are some interesting things when we said we wanted to be a private road, because the city code, you may not know, states that all subdivisions are supposed to have roads in them brought up to the public standard to be accepted by the city. And since Jim was out there, you know, it says has to be a 50-foot wide public road easement dedicated per separate, that was you. We did not intend that this would be under the city. We meant it would be a private road.
So,
In his letter, and then you said it will become a 50-foot wide public road upon approval of a subdivision by the city council and dedication. This wasn't what we said. I said if it was public road, he'd be required to spend a lot of money upgrading it.
well, you know, as far as upgrading it, you know, the minimum requirements are a 20-foot, 24-foot surface.
It has to be engineered, and they have certain requirements for the surfaces.
You know, the city has some discretion as to whether they can waive the technical requirements. Of course, they could impose sidewalks and so on, but under the circumstance. Now, you know, we can get wrapped up in the technical aspects of this and step away from common sense and what's practical. And let me explain why a private road is problematic for the city as well as the property owners. All property within a municipality should be served by a public road. They should have access by virtue of a public road. If it's a private road within this subdivision, then there is a web of easements back and forth that it gets very technical and complex. You can't just say it's a private road because property owner A has to get an easement from property owner B. And property owner C has to get an easement from property owners A and B.
That's why you have the homeowners, the road association agreement, because they all go together on the road, and they all have interest in the road.
Well, you have an owners association and a road maintenance agreement, which is fine. But in order for Lot A to have a legal right to cross over somebody else's property, they have to have an easement if it's not a public right-of-way. So I've done it before, it can be done.
Well, nobody's ever done that before out there. And if they could just put it in the homeowners agreement that they all have a right of easement across each other's property, that'd be simple, one paragraph.
Across each other's property.
So they can go down and visit their friend down here, and they can go back and forth. They're all using the road, everybody that lives out there. But you keep trying to make it a public road,
It's just that it works so much better. It really does. It works better for the city if it's a public road, because
No, it
then in
doesn't.
future years,
City would then have an obligation for any problems if they're not doing the maintenance.
they don't have any legal obligation whatsoever. They don't have obligation for liability. They don't have an obligation for maintenance. That's a
They wouldn't have
misconception.
maintenance, but I should think they have the liability.
They know, it's specifically stated in the statute, that simply because it is a public road does not impose liability
Well,
on
I
the
thought the
entity.
thing I found was Idaho State Statute 50-1301, where it didn't say anything about who would be the,
Well, that's not the statute that I'm referring to.
which statute would that be?
Well, I don't have it off the top of my head,
Okay.
but you're not an attorney.
I
I'm
know I'm
sorry.
not, that's why I was asking you which one.
Well, I wasn't prepared to provide you with that. I can provide you with the statute that states that
But you keep stating in here that it's going to be a public road, not a private one. And I know you want it to be that.
it's just so much simpler and common sense. If it's a public road, then the city has control over it with no
Well,
obligation.
What I'm seeing
And,
here,
and if your owner's association, doesn't do its job, it can be problematic. And if the city needs to install utilities, that's a problem. Then you've gotta go to the property owners. and
they
get-
already have the city water out there with
Well,
easement.
what about if there's sewer in the future?
Never.
That'll never happen ever.
They'd have to spend a lot of money to put a pumping station out there because the way it goes up, so that's why there's no sewer out there right now. The only other way to get a
You
sewer
you
would
have
be
to
to go
think
down
about, you
here.
have to think about 20 years from now.
I am. And nobody's going, it's going to keep getting more expensive each
Okay,
time.
I can see that.
They've already gone through it because people wanted to put sewer out there. It would be very nice to have it, but the expenses are outrageous for that amount of land.
You're missing the point. The point is, the city would have the ability to do that. The city has control if it's a public street. Now, listen, if you really want to stick to this private road based upon misconceptions, we'll do it that way. But it's awkward, and yes, each property owner has to have a legal easement to cross. You can't just say in an owner's association that, gee, we have the right to use this road, everybody has the right to use this road. You have to grant easements to property owners for the legal right to cross somebody else's property. So there would have to be easements granted back and forth between these property owners for a private road to serve as access to their properties.
Well, you know, there are other things that are, maybe it sounds like nitpicking to you, but you've got the homeowners road agreement. We thought it should be, you have it for all who own land on Riverview Drive. That is, all those who use the private road because they have land touching it. That was the way we meant it to be. But this agreement that you have does not do that.
You look at the road maintenance agreement,
Uh-huh.
you requested a road maintenance agreement, that's what I saw in that.
Well, the homeowners road agreement, right, for everybody that touched the road. You only have 3 lots. It doesn't include all those who own it because you're giving parcel A to the Kellys, and they're not included in the
No,
agreement.
wait a minute, but we don't have any control over those other property owners.
Well, to begin this, I'm saying you're giving part of the road to parcel A to the Kellys, and they aren't included in it. They would be owning part of the road if you give them parcel A.
Well, I don't know what Jim's gonna do. I don't know if he's, if it's approved, if he's even gonna go ahead and go through with it at this point in time. Who knows?
I'm just saying with this agreement you have only included lots 1, 2, and 3. So those were the only owners. But then you have parcel A being given to Kelly, which includes the road.
Parcel A, what's parcel A? I only know about lots. We've got a subdivision record of survey.
I got it.
What are we talking about?
Right here.
Well, that's what Kelly owns.
The letter.
That's Kelly's property.
A is not their property.
Oh, I see this right here.
Yes.
Now, that's Golding's deal there, part of A. He may have been trying to do some kind of a private thing with Kelly's.
But if they're owning part of the road, they have to be included in the agreement, no matter how you cut it.
I don't, to tell you the truth, I should have noticed this before, but it's the first time I've really paid any attention to that. What, does he indicate what A is in his deal here?
There's two of the two, same thing. I just put it together for my reference.
He says it'll be boundary line adjusted. I don't know why he has to put that in, since he's just selling off the different parts.
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
The parcel A will be boundary line adjusted to Kelly ownership to the west.
But say it again, slowly.
Parcel A will be boundary line adjusted to the Kelly ownership to the west.
Oh, that's to give, so they were gonna do an adjustment of his boundary line
Yeah,
to give him that section of road.
yep. And they're not included in the road agreement. So
But they wouldn't,
they'd be owning part of the road then.
well, they'd be owning not part of the subdivision road because they're not part of the subdivision. That
Irrelevant.
road is outside the boundary of the subdivision.
Irrelevant. We're dealing with a road. That road goes past the subdivision on down.
Yes,
And if you're selling off, Jim's selling all of his land down there, who's going to own the road down there?
if he does this boundary line adjustment, Kelly would,
And past Kelly?
and past Kelly,
Slays.
No, something ours.
Well,
No,
Slays is in
no,
there too.
Slade is
Slade's is in the
between
middle.
Kelly and no.
No, going down,
Oh, this way.
yeah, going south. Yeah.
Right here.
see, that's,
I know.
I'll tell you
But
what,
this is
you know,
Slee, oh, Slee, you say, I thought you said Slee.
No.
Yeah, Slee and Umfenar, they're going to have something to say.
well, they've got an easement. I don't get it. They don't.
They had, what kind of an easement? There is no easement put on any of this information we've given. You said the only easement on there was the water line for the city. That's all that's shown.
No,
You look at your map, that's the only easement shown.
Well, it may not be showing on the map, but each of these three property owners have an easement. They have a
And it's
20-foot wide
supposed to be
easement.
on the plat. That's a state requirement.
It's not part of the subdivision, Cynthia. Their
It's
property
part-
is not part of the subdivision, nor is the road that fronts their property. It's outside the boundary of the subdivision.
No, it isn't.
Lot 4.
Okay. All of this lot here, and they have this land, and this land is sold off, but this all here is part of the subdivision. The whole road is part of the subdivision.
The road only provides access to each of these lots, so yeah, Lot 4 would be part of the subdivision. You're right.
This all, and they would be abutting the road.
They would be abutting the road.
Yes,
But they have a private easement to their property
Maybe they
over this
do.
road.
but it should be shown on the different things, and you said that the only
I
easement,
think he did show it on his record survey.
No.
the only thing I saw in there was the water.
Should be water, TDS, and a Vista.
Yeah. Has existing road center line,
Yeah,
and it is 50-foot wide public road easement dedicated for a separate document.
right.
It doesn't say anything about previous easements.
No, nor should it.
Yeah, excepting that when you start looking at the water lines, that gets really interesting. Where's the line for the water?
I know, it's confusing, it's the last two pages.
Yes, they've got out of there they are. If you look on the one with the easement showing the water lines, he's got 2 water easements on there.
Well, there were 2.
And one was invalidated by the city council.
Abandoned.
Abandoned, yeah, that's right.
They took action to abandon
Yes, they
the
did.
prior one.
I have the
Uh-huh.
So
documents.
he needs
I
to
told
change
him that
that.
previously.
So he needs to change that and
Yes, he knew
eliminate
it.
that. Let me make a note of that. All right.
Because he knows this, so he should have done that.
Well,
I told him,
yeah. I
so he
know.
shouldn't be charging Jim for it because
All right, so, 1 water line easement,
yes,
that's an easy fix, of course.
that one is. And there's some other easy fixes too.
Okay, before we get to the easy fixes, let's see if we
Well,
can
I'd like to
figure
know
out.
some of the easy ones that, it sounds nice to accomplish something.
For the sake of order, can we start with the first one and work down? Because
Yeah, this isn't one of these, I was just going to say that the state law requires that the name of the subdivision be shown, and it isn't shown, and he had it on some of the others, so that's quick.
So, Smith Acres subdivision.
Yes, and that we need to have on there that each street shall be named, that's also required by state law. And he doesn't have Riverview Drive on there, so those 2 quick and easy,
Okay,
okay.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure to have the letter when we recommend that I have everything in there.
Well, I can write the letter out.
Oh, well,
That'll make it easier, you're busy right now.
oh, well,
Yeah,
I asked you right there, I just kind of.
yeah, you have it, okay. And we talked about also, you're showing giving the Kelly's a 25-foot strip of roadway, and then you're turning around and making it a public roadway
yeah,
in such a way that the city could wind up owning the roadbed, and that doesn't make sense. Because, I mean, you're having them sign that homeowners, that other agreement.
you know, I'm really remiss in not noticing that parcel A thing,
Mhm.
because I really don't know what he was thinking with that. Access, I guess, it
I
would
don't
have
know,
to be.
they'd had it there before, when they first started this 3 years ago. And they,
3 years.
yes. And we get something going with Jim, and they turn around and he say no, it's something else. And then we began to new plats, even though it wasn't the one we originally had, and this thing has been major trouble. And so we know the history of this very well, because it went on for about a year before it finally was sent out to the city.
Let's see if we can, so,
So,
you want to insist on the private road. You don't
Yes.
want a public road dedication here that
Correct.
solves all the problems, and it is
oh, it causes
And
a few
I'm
more
not-
problems.
part of the
I can
problem.
see a few more problems to cause.
Shall we look at the subdivision ordinance? Can you even have a subdivision with private roads?
If the city council says so,
We do have one now.
yes.
It
You do have
exists.
one now?
Uh-huh.
It's a private road all the way, the city road stops halfway up the hill and then from there it extends, and that's all private road.
Okay,
And the city paved it also, that same time that they paved out there. And the reason the paved road stopped where it stopped was because they ran out of material that they got from the state when they were doing the highway out there, so it had nothing to do with any city expense involved in it.
It was regrind. It wasn't even real pavement.
Anyhow, on your condition 6 in your letter,
yeah,
uh,
what's that?
they're saying the end of Old Main Street. Well,
At
Yes.
the section line,
yep,
well, I have a question there. Who says that Old Main stops at the section line?
We didn't know. As a commission, we thought maybe.
we thought maybe,
That-
we're saying
but
it needs to be
logically, that was
verified.
the-
And
But we don't know.
on the plat,
So we still don't have that
I've
answer.
got some information, I was just gonna say. The plat shows approximate end of County Road heading north according to warranty deed number 2665253. and this needs to be removed. The deed does not include, that deed does not include the easements for electrical power, private road by H.B. McLean, and that's what gets very interesting, that one. Washington Water Power, all of which were included on the second correction deed. They made all these correction deeds and they're trying to get it straight.
What are you reading right now?
What I wrote up so I wouldn't forget things to mention.
Are you gonna give me, I can't remember everything you're saying there, so it's off the cuff, I can't even comment on it.
Anyhow, well, they had four, it's what they based their claim on for the county road bit. The third and fourth correction deeds are the ones that made mention to the county road. Before that, they didn't mention, they had the different dimensions.
Who's they, and what are you talking about?
Whoever it was that wrote up these deeds
The survey.
incorrectly, I don't know that it was a survey.
Well, let's just go back just a little bit and let me
Do you
fill
want
in
to
some
look at the
information.
deeds? I've got them here.
Well, I've looked at the deeds to that now the Kelly Umfenauer,
Way back.
way
Real
back,
farther back,
it's
266.
1973 circa.
Just a minute. 26. Oh, it's in here someplace.
Wait a minute, you don't need to look at that. Let me just explain, because I know. Eva Daniels, Jim Smith's grandmother,
Right.
owned that property.
Right.
And she split off those 3 parcels.
Mm-hmm.
She had a surveyor survey those 3 parcels and provide legal descriptions of those 3 parcels. And the surveyor also provided a legal description, included it in the deeds of the easement to the end of the county road. In each of those deeds, he included an easement to the end of the county road. And then he went on and legally described it by meets and bounds description to a point. And that's the point that Golding is referencing on the plat. That's the location of that legal description of their easement.
Okay, I've got the second correction, Eva Daniels to the Nolan Noreen. That was the first part that she broke off. And it does not include anything about a county road. You want to come over here and read it?
I have that too.
What about the other deeds?
They made this second, let's see, in this one also, they had mentioned general taxes or easement for electrical transmission, reservation for private road by H.B. McLean.
No, do you have all 3 deeds?
There's 4 actually.
Should be in here someplace.
There are 4.
Do you have them?
Yeah,
Let me look at them,
please.
please.
As soon as I give them up, I will be glad to. I just want to say one thing because it's driving me absolutely
Alright.
crazy. No landlocked. You're incorrect. Not landlocked.
Why?
Because I have them in the deeds where it says they go through there. They are not landlocked. They are not. And by the way, I do have a judge's ruling that they're not
Well,
landlocked.
we're not gonna worry about that right now, we're just
Yeah,
going
okay.
over this.
No, it's important. that
Well, no,
these-
right.
These
They are not
properties would be
landlocked.
landlocked.
They are
One
not
thing at a
landlocked.
time, right? Right now, we're going over what these deeds say. This deed that is current, it didn't say anything about the county
Hey,
road.
if you folks want to take the risk that these properties will not be landlocked
They're not.
by not validating Old Main Street to Riverview Drive, you know, that's, if you've convinced yourself that that's not a problem,
And then
you're wrong,
once
but
you get that part, a little bit of land, you have a county road, I mean, not a county road, but a city road, then you want to turn the whole thing along there in the city road, don't you?
what's that?
Well, you're asking now that we want to make this into a city road, right?
I think that it's, you know, you can see under one of the options, that if you validate Old Main Street to Riverview Drive, then it solves the landlock issue.
Except you get a lot of other issues in there too.
Like what?
Well, have you ever been out on the road?
Yeah.
It's a one-lane road with
Number
a
4.
couple pull-offs.
I'd like that back too, by the way.
What's number 4?
Number 4, there's a number 4 in there.
Talking about Riverview, right?
Oh, that's
You're
meaningless.
just talking about that little piece. Okay.
Okay, now first you're talking about the little piece you want that, where you claim it doesn't, the Riverview Drive goes out into Jim's Field and,
What
Old
I'm
Main
talking
goes-
about is Old Main Street existing as a long existing public road to the intersection with Riverview Drive.
Okay, this is much,
Well, I see a discrepancy between, I'm feeling a discrepancy between the end of Old Main being at a section line and an imaginary other spot. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Well, it's not imaginary if a surveyor identified
Okay,
its
but
location.
where is it?
Well,
Everybody seems to be
a lot
hung.
of public roads exist because they're there.
Okay, but
why is it there?
who decided that it's supposed to be at a section line instead of a different point?
That, I have no idea.
And I'm feeling that there's a discrepancy between agreement on section line or at a different point for the end of Old Main.
You don't necessarily just say, well, it's at the section line.
You're right. Nor do you
If
at the
it's
end of Riverview
existed,
Drive.
if it's existed as a public road and never been vacated or abandoned,
Okay.
then it's a public road.
When was
And-
it?
and
Where
we-
was it going to or from?
It was part of the American Ridge-Julietta Road.
There you go.
American Ridge is that way, and it says American Ridge and Julietta Road. And also, I've been going through, long before this, the Julietta, the minutes. And that part going Old Main goes through the Aldrich addition. And back in 1892, there was a petition of Aldrich was approved granting him the privilege to open a street to connect with Main Street from his addition, providing he paid damages incurred by the opening of said street. Now, if it's a road from his addition that they're going to open, it's not a county road that's been there. It's just a road through his addition. And then, a little later in the month, he petitioned asking for the removal of certain obstructions in the highway leading into the main street of his addition was read. That's where you get Main Street in there, because there's the main street of Aldrich addition. The council decided to get legal advice regarding same. In January of 1893, chairman reported an Aldrich petition saying that the city was not compelled to take any action on same. That sounds very much like a private road. We need to look up for more information on it.
You're reading something totally out of context. The American Ridge-Julietta Road ran from Arrow through Julietta to American Ridge. And it was established in 1895, and the section of Old Main Street corresponds with the original plat.
Here's the
So-
original plat.
The original plat of the road. So,
And where
You
did you
know,
find the
folks-
original plat of the road?
at the county,
I've been up there looking at the roads, and
it's in the road
road book.
file, in the road
but I
file.
didn't see it in there, anything that showed that going through there. In 1895?
Yeah.
1893.
May I ask an odd question
We're
here?
getting so far
Was that the
off track.
original way to town, in quotes, before Highway 3 was built in the
Yes.
20s by the state?
Yes.
Okay.
That was
There was a,
so long.
basically, you had
It was built in
railroad.
early 1930s.
This is a modern day map with the old Julietta Arrow, or Ridge superimposed on it. If you will look, there's Smith's
Yeah,
driveway,
yeah.
there's Cross Street. It goes down. Do you remember when the Julietta Market wasn't there?
No, that was before my time.
And it came
But
down
I
through
can, I
here.
can
Here
see,
is
I can
the
see
courts.
the old right of way in the fall and winter when it
Yes, you
snows
can, and
and
you can
it
see
comes
the
up the
road.
hill.
You can see the road through here,
Yes,
and you can walk on that road right now.
yep.
Right now today, you can
See,
walk on that
when it
road.
snows, you can see the old right
So
of way.
the thing is, Old Main Street, I think we can all agree that Old Main Street is part of that American Ridge
No.
Julietta
No.
Road. Why
No.
would they move it? Why
They
would they
moved-
change
They
it?
didn't move it.
Why would
It
this
never
long?
existed.
It never existed.
At that time, it did not exist until 1936.
It was established in 1895, according to.
Yes, that road was.
Back then, that road was simply part
Hey,
of all.
I'll tell you
tradition.
what. You are wrong, totally wrong about Old Main Street being part of the American Ridge Julietta Road. You are totally wrong about Old Main Street existing as a public road to the turnaround. But if you want to hold on to
I
that,
didn't say it was a public road to
Thank
the
you.
turnaround and anything, all I
I've
didn't say
got
what it
the other
was.
plat maps for this.
if you want to hold on to that,
I'm completely neutral on what I said.
you've got another option there. And if you think that you're not landlocking those 3 parcels whose easements describe to the end of the county road at a point 200 feet south of the section, you're wrong. And if you want to take that risk,
Well,
go
you know
ahead.
they're about 250 feet. If you go back and look at those maps, those deeds that we were discussing just a little earlier, you notice they don't have, like Terry does, so many feet here, there, and all the little jigs along. He's going along where the road is, where people actually drive.
No, look at those deeds, those are meets and bounds descriptions, those are
And
course
it
and
goes
distance.
up, and then it goes here, and then it's like, there are only 3 turns. And you go from one deed to another correction, and I think it's 185 feet difference. So one of those deeds that didn't mention.
No, Cynthia, there's 165 and change, and then you have another little wedge of
I know, you're not
73
looking at
and
the same
change.
thing you're looking at, I was looking at. What did I say the number was?
Sorry.
26.
So,
Okay.
I want to just, I'm not going to convince you of anything here.
Because when you look here down the bottom of the easement, you have on the second correction to D 264413. I've been up there and I've been online. But it's going north 682.79 feet, then goes, that's 689, then on the 4th correction, they have it down to 554 feet. So you've got a good distance there. People, why were they making all those corrections and changes? They kept changing things in the different descriptions, and if it was a surveyor that did this, because there were other changes in there too. different times.
I don't even know what you're saying.
I'm saying that your 200, close to 200 feet could be just the combination of the fact that they went straight along instead of making turns. Have you ever looked up on a map, on like GIS, a Lake County map, and tried putting the distances in?
I don't know, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I've looked at a lot of GIS maps, but putting what distances
Yeah,
in where.
there's a little, from the bottom corner down at Umfenhours, on the southeast corner of his property, which is what their easement starts with. They don't start in a driveway. They start down there, and then they go up along the edge of the Umfenhour property, take a slight turn for distance, and then another slight turn, and they're out at the edge of the property. They don't have all those other turns, and they give the distance each one.
So we've got a surveyor, Terry Golding, who looked at the deeds and plotted the legal description of the easement and identified the location of the end of the county road in those easements as a point 200 feet south of the section line.
And he's the same surveyor who, instead of starting it down at the edge of the Umfenhour property, decided to put the roadway going into the Umfenhour's driveway, who left off the roadway name, who left off Smith Acres. I mean, he
So
was
wait a
not
minute.
concentrating on this.
I'm not a surveyor, so I don't argue with surveyors. I guess you have more expertise in the surveying.
Well, I know
field
when
than
I look
do.
at a map and it shows that the driveway's supposed to start down here, and somebody else decides to start it up here, there's a discrepancy.
Well, I think that there could be some discrepancies where the road was actually built after the surveyor laid it out and did a course and distance description of where the road is supposed to be, and then the road builder comes along and actually builds it.
Yeah.
But
But if they don't want to build the easement down here, the easement's still there. You
if
don't
you've
have,
got course and distance to a point at the northernmost point,
yeah, I can
there's
see.
not a
We
200-foot
need-
discrepancy.
I'm saying you need to do a little more research up for that. But I'm saying down
No,
at the
you know,
bottom.
I don't care. I'm not gonna do it.
I'm saying
It's
that-
your liability. I
I'm
don't
saying
care.
though that the bottom, they still, legally, it was written out the last time that they had an easement. It was starting from the bottom of the Umfenhour's property, south end, and then went all north, all along the edge of it. Somehow
I'll
Terry
tell you
decided
what,
it didn't belong there.
if you decide that you've analyzed the survey, and you've analyzed these deeds, and you've come to the conclusion that these property owners are not landlocked, you go for it.
Okay, we will.
I think you'd be making a big mistake, but that's your prerogative, and that's what the courts are for.
And it's also interesting, I'd like a little more information on your comment down here about claims of ownership, referring to the section 1 that Jim and Kathy Gross does. Claims of ownership by adverse possession may not be asserted if the claimed ground is subject to a public right-of-way easement. Now, is that one of the reasons why Jim and you are liking the idea of public right-of-way?
Well, no, it's a moot point. The only don't listen to me for
I
a
wanted to
second.
make sure
You
that.
interrupt me every time I start talking. The only reason we researched the public road is because Kathy Gross claimed to own Jim's property by adverse possession.
Mm-hmm.
And so that made it relevant. Well, if it's a public road, you cannot claim a public road by adverse possession. The judge has made a decision that Kathy Gross was wrong, and he ruled in Jim's favor. So
Not
now,
completely.
the public road is no longer an issue in the boundary line dispute. That's all done.
That's my
But
question.
we, in the process, we discovered all this information that we provided you to establish that Old Main Street is a public road that has never been vacated or abandoned up to the turnaround point, up to the Riverview Drive intersection, approximately.
Interesting. If there was a county road, would the county have had to accept the roadway easements?
Roadway easements.
Yeah, I found like the Kendrick-Juliaetta roadway back in 1890.
You mean right of way, not easement.
Yeah, right.
Right
Right
of
of way
way.
easement are used interchangeable so often, but,
I don't have any idea what your question is.
okay. I found the right of way for the Kendrick-Juliaetta, because on this one of the things.
Kendrick-Juliaetta.
Yeah, okay,
A different road?
yes.
Oh, okay.
I was looking at the deeds, and one of them mentioned a Latah County easement to do with the property, and gave a number. And I went to the courthouse and looked it up, and it had nothing to do with the property, but everything to do with the Kendrick-Juliaetta Road, the landowners giving their right-of-way to the county.
Right.
Now, if this was a county road, we should be able to find something like that, shouldn't we?
No, there were many different ways that county roads were established. One was by deed, and that may be what you're looking at.
A
It
right-of-way.
said private property owners, right-of-way easement, same thing. Private property owners would grant to the county or the city in some circumstances, or the state, by deed. That's one way. The second way would be by petition. If 10 property owners got together and petitioned the county to open a public road, and the county would then have a viewer go out and have it surveyed and determine whether or not to accept that petition as a public road. That's the second way. The third way is by use, by public use. And the county could declare it a public road by virtue of public use. And that's what the county did with the American Ridge-Juliaetta Road, a section of which is Old Main Street. They established that as a public road by virtue of long existing public use and need for
You
the
found
road.
the record?
When did they?
1895. I've got the minutes here somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
You have them too.
And I've provided all this stuff, but just a sec here.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's any kind of discrepancy as to whether a road does or does not exist, there's a process in place today called validation, which is what you and the people up there presented to the city, and the city set up a system and a means to accomplish that, and that is not moved forward. So if for any reason there is a discrepancy on a public road, it is my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that a validation should occur, and that is not being done. Am I right? And by the way, you guys don't have any ability to validate that road.
No.
Only the
Correct.
city does.
Yep.
So why
City
are we
council.
spending so much time on this when it isn't a point at all?
Well, the commission might make a recommendation. They may say they've looked at and provide some information to the city council. But, and yes, you're wrong about the first part.
I'm wrong about what?
The first part, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you're wrong.
About what?
Whatever it was you said. Oh, it didn't make any sense, so.
That you don't have to validate a road if there's a question?
No, you don't have to validate a road if there's a question.
Okay, so that was a public road, you're saying?
I'm saying that the evidence indicates that it was a public road.
Okay, let's go with that assumption. Correct me again if I am wrong. But the historic turnaround you keep referring to,
Yeah,
I have pictures of when that was put in. It was put in May 20th, 2021 by Jim
yeah.
Smith,
I know
and
Jim expanded that area and
that was
developed
not a
that
public
area.
turnaround until that point.
Well,
That was not a public turnaround until that point. That was not a historic turnaround until that point.
The turnaround up with the Smiths, you weren't able to turn the snowplow around beforehand, were you?
Nope.
You had to go down
Before,
there.
no,
No.
but now you can
Yeah.
turn.
you know, I think you're missing the forest for the trees, to tell you the truth. You can really get hung up on a lot of technical stuff. I've tried to lay it out in your three options, what the practical aspects of this are, as far as the benefit of the public in establishing that as a public road to the intersection with Riverview Drive. But, you know, all I can do is lay it out there for you, and if you want to fight it, that's your decision. And, you know, I don't know that I'm going to represent the landlocked property owners, that if you determine that for some strange reason that the old Main Street ends at the section line, but that's going to be the upshot of this if that's the determination. Now that it's been presented to the city, that we are asking the city to validate Old Main Street to the intersection with Riverview Drive, and if the city says no, then I think there's liability.
So
They didn't say no. They said that if you
No,
paved
this
it.
man,
Sorry.
go ahead,
Brian.
Mike.
So that is the 200 feet that's in, being contested between the section line and the intersection of Riverview.
Right.
So that goes.
So that
across
is the big,
Jim's.
that's the hangup, that 200 feet is.
Yep.
And that goes across Jim's property, doesn't it?
Yes?
So what's the hangup?
Yeah, what is the hangup on that 200 feet?
No, if you looked at my options, you said you read them carefully a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
One of the options is if Jim's subdivision is approved and he dedicates the 50-foot right-of-way, then there's no problem. Other than it diminishes the turnaround area, would be the only issue. But if Jim doesn't go forward with his subdivision and dedicate that road to the public, then those three property owners will be landlocked.
Then you could just give them an easement across like they
Well,
already
he
have.
possibly could do that, and then, you know, I'm not sure if Ms. Grosspos would also have to grant them an easement. That's a possibility, I guess, that could happen.
Is he going ahead with Mr. Sleed's property? Because that was a swap, you know, Jim's, the house Jim's.
You know, he's not going ahead with anything unless this is approved.
Well, I'm saying that's not part of the subdivision.
Oh, I
That-
don't know what you're talking about
Okay.
there.
When Jim's mom, Jody, Betty Jo Smith, had the house put up there that Jim's living in now,
Yeah.
it got plunked down right on the center point where four different lots met right there. And so three of them he owned and one that was owned by Mr. Sleed.
Who's Schley? Is he
Sleed, S-L-E-A-D.
Neighboring
The neighbor.
landowner.
a neighboring landowner to
Yeah.
the,
It's out
To
in
Jim.
town, to Jim.
to Jim?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
got cards
but
on.
not relevant to any of this?
It is to this.
Okay,
This is Sleed's property right
over here?
Yes.
Oh,
And this-
okay.
And this is,
Oh, that's what he
That's-
was, that's why that's there.
yes, it's for gaining access to
So
Sleed's.
Schley could get access?
Yes.
Sleed.
Okay,
Because
and so,
Jim's house was sitting on his neighbor's land. And so they made an agreement that they would switch the land that the house is on for that 30-foot right-of-way. That he was supposed to get the land to. So So Betty Jo went up with Sleeve to the county courthouse. Well, she did it herself on an easement form and had the township wrong. So he doesn't have anything. So,
So he needs an easement.
you know, he needs land.
He
because
needs what?
He needs the land because he gave her a section of his land that the house is on.
I don't, this is so unrelated to.
It isn't, because it's part of the whole deal, that bit of land.
Deal.
Yeah, it you see, it's drawn, it says Sleeve, 30 feet wide. And,
Oh, that little A or B area that you showed?
Yes,
yeah,
0.10 acres.
Okay, and so that would be deeded to him, is what you're saying?
it's supposed to be
And,
deeded.
and you have a problem with that?
Nope, I'm saying I don't know why he hasn't gone ahead and done it.
Oh,
It's
well,
not
he's
part-
probably waiting for this to be
Well, it's
approved.
not part of the subdivision. He got the land.
It's within the subdivision boundary. though,
Well,
I
no,
suppose.
because it was dated back before he started doing it, when his mom owned the land, and she tried giving that land to Mr.
I
Sleeve.
guess I'm still missing the point.
Okay,
What do you want?
I think that he should go ahead and give the land for B to Mr. Sleeve, because he's been
Because he
waiting all
has
this
no
time.
legal access.
Hmm?
Because Schlee has no legal.
Sleeve, not Schlee,
Schlee has no legal access.
because, well, he has up on the higher road, but that's a long way around, and the agreement was that he would be given the land for the land that Jim's house
Well,
is
I
sitting
think the
on.
fact that it's in
Okay.
that plat suggests that was going to be done
Yeah.
as part of this.
Yeah, but he should be done anyhow.
Okay, I'll tell him.
Okay, I appreciate that. I like things tidied up.
All right, any other landowners you're concerned about?
No, that's the only one,
Okay.
because, I mean, that's the only thing that was untidy.
So, 3 years. So what I guess I need to take something with me here. I've made some notes as to the minor problems, but you're hung up, you want this to be a private road. You're really
That's what
adamant
we
about
said.
that. Pardon me?
That's what we'd said when we sent the recommendation to the city, and we're supposed to be telling the city whether this meets.
It seems like I saw something in the subdivision ordinance that says, and it should, if it doesn't, say that a subdivision requires a public road.
Engineered and brought up to city standards.
All right, so let's play with that a little bit then. So you want it to be a private road?
I'm saying, first to begin with, Jim told us they absolutely would not have it engineered or brought up to city standards. That's where we were. And we wanted to make it possible for this thing to go
So
forward.
this is to accommodate Jim to leave it as a private road?
Partially, yes. It seems sensible since it was out there.
Because I think it could be dedicated as a public road without also having to be brought up to standards.
Nope,
Why not?
Ordinance, isn't it?
the ordinance.
Yeah, there's an ordinance. for
Why
that.
should the city of Julietta assume the responsibility and the expense of making that public road when it is clearly a
What's the
subdivision
expense?
or
It will
a
be.
subdivider's
You
responsibility?
see, the way we left it was there was a road agreement with all the people using the road, all the homeowners that touched the road. They would then, if they ever wanted it made a city road, they would be responsible for engineering and bringing it up to city standards.
Yes.
That way, the other city taxpayers are not going to be having to pay the money to do so. If you make it a public easement like you're talking about, then if it's ever going to be brought up to standards, all the city taxpayers are going to pay for it.
But it wouldn't have to be. The city doesn't have to do that. If they
We
don't
don't
want
have to, but if we want to. For instance, if Old Main Street keeps collapsing, instead of being 9 feet wide, supposing it goes down more, you have to.
Well, if it's a private road and you want to do that,
I'm not talking about Old Main Street, I'm talking about this point, Old Main Street's out here, we're talking about the subdivision. So if they can't get to the property this way, you're going to have to find some other way to get in. So that would have to become a public street in the future. We have to do planning as well as zoning. And
now,
so,
wait a minute. Why would Old Main Street not serve as access?
well, it's only, some parts are only, what is it, 9 feet wide, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. And if it keeps collapsing down,
I see. then you wouldn't fix that, you would build a whole new public road, is that what you're
Well, I'm
talking
saying
about?
that could be an option, because it wouldn't, because there's a whole big stretch that nobody needs, so if they had the public road go here and then go downhill,
My goodness.
you have to plan ahead for, because what are you gonna do, blow off the hillside? I mean, 9 feet is
Well-
not very wide for a road.
No, and, to go out there with the fire engine is a
Yeah.
pain in the butt.
That's why you need that,
Yes.
to be a public road.
That hammerhead turnaround that Jim put in was at my request as the fire
Right,
chief.
right,
And
So-
Jim
did it?
did that,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it was very much appreciated, because
Yeah.
before there was no place to turn around, and we
Yeah.
had to back all the way out past Kathy's
Absolutely.
house.
Common
to get-
sense and-
to get
and
turned around.
Public safety, that's what's important here, is, my goodness, we could nitpick and argue about whether the sun really comes up or not. I mean, let's try and get realistic and practical here. I'm trying to explain that dedication of this road, subdivision road, as a public road imposes no obligation, no liability on the city whatsoever. It just simplifies things and gives the city all kinds of options that it may need in the
And
future.
you just thought it
But-
passes the buck.
Pardon me?
You thought it passes the buck as far as bringing the road up to standard.
You know, there's lots of roads in these small towns that the city may at some point want to bring up to standards, in which case they've got to go ahead and do that.
No.
But not all of them are.
We're saying
The
we're
ordinance says that the subdeveloper,
subdivided, so you
is
either
to
say it's a
improve it.
private road or Jim's going to
Okay,
have to bring out.
so we'll make it a private road, per your request.
That's what we said to
However,
begin
it doesn't solve the landlocked problem for the
Jim,
city.
if it's a private road on Jim's property,
Then he can grant an easement to those individuals.
right,
All right, and so we'll have to do a reciprocal easement for each of these property owners, so that each of them has an easement over this road. Your concept of an owners association saying, we all get to use the road, is not legally sufficient.
okay.
It doesn't work. So there has to be an easement. So each of these property owners grants the other an easement to
That
cross.
goes with the land.
That runs with the land, that's what an easement does, yes. And it's complex and unnecessary. But I can see that I'm spitting into the wind, to put it politely. So, you know, it strikes me as just a total misconception that dedication of this as a public right-of-way is unacceptable. Okay, we won't do that then. We'll, if you want to make this a private road, and you want an additional condition, and that is that Jim grant easements to those other property owners that are not part of the subdivision, I guess we can look at that.
Well, we
To try
originally
and solve
said,
all the problems.
okay, that was solved. Plus,
So is that it? If we take care of the private road and those other minor things, the two water line easements, the name on the subdivision?
those are all the other easements that belong on there too.
Well, they're on there. They're
No,
on
they
the
aren't.
plan. Which one?
Washington Water Power, the telephone, they're not on there,
What's he got on there?
just the two water lines.
Yeah, it doesn't have Vista's easement, it doesn't have TDS's easement,
I think Clearwater is supposed to have an easement
and
too.
then the utility easement for water, well, it does have that, sorry.
Okay, so it's,
Got two more.
you think there's an Avista easement there
It'll be,
and TDS?
historically, it'll show Washington Water Power, it's the predecessor to Vista.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. You hate this, don't you? You just hate this subdivision. Just, is it Jim that you don't like, or?
Oh, Jim's nice, I know his mom.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's not the problem, I just hate messed up paperwork.
I just see some hidden agenda here, something I just can't understand.
I'm just trying to get we're trying to get things straight, so
Fine.
nobody else ever has to go through this mess again.
This has been a nightmare from hell,
And you should, well,
and I thought this was already solved, and I was surprised that we're revisiting.
What did you think was solved?
I was brought under the impression that this was all solved and taken care of.
You mean his subdivision was approved?
No,
No.
no,
Oh,
no. The issue of this easement,
the private road, public road,
Yes,
public
yes.
dedication?
yes.
Okay. You thought everybody understood it's gonna be a private road?
right,
Okay. And to tell you the truth, it was my idea to make it, to dedicate it to the city. It wasn't Jim's idea, it wasn't Golding's idea, it's my idea because it's much more sensible. But throw common sense out the window and let's do it your way.
okay.
We'll do it as a private easement and we'll, in order for this subdivision to be approved, Jim will also need to grant easements to these other property owners on the road that we described. So we've got a legal description of the road. And we'll simply grant an easement to those three property owners. Jim will, it's his property.
For the owners of those properties.
Okay, but then each of those other property owners, that those property owners at the far south, they will also have to grant an easement because they own part of the road.
If, at this point, Jim owns the road, all of the whole of the road. He hasn't sold the land to anybody else. So if he gives an easement that goes with the land to those three people down there, that should be all that's required, because then if he sells the land to other people, the easement will go right along with it.
Well, see, the problem is, the people at the end of the road have to cross the property owners.
No, that's not the problem. We've got this hunk of land, and there are three people down here that are going
Okay,
along the road.
okay, so now,
So
let me
Jim
just think
owns
this
the
through.
whole land.
So, these three property owners could be granted an easement by Jim at this point, he owns the land. And the other property owners, the lots 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Haven't been sold yet.
haven't been sold yet. So they could be sold subject to that easement, okay?
Right.
And then when lot, whatever it is, lot 1 or lot 2 is sold, it's sold subject to the easement to Umfenauer, Kelly, and Schlee, or
Yeah.
whoever that is. And then possibly also this other property owner.
Well, lot 1 is Jim.
Well, I mean, the one outside the subdivision.
Sleeves.
So,
Oh, see, yeah.
so the lot owner of lot number 2 will have to grant an easement to property in the subdivision, to, I don't have the plat right in front of me, but I can work it out.
If
I can work it out.
if you already have an easement across the property that Jim has granted to them,
No, that's those three property owners, but then property owners as new
As he
owners
acquires,
in each of
yeah.
those, each one of those acquires. I can do it, I could work it out. If you folks want this to be a private road, we can work that out. We can make it happen.
Do we know where the end of Old Main Street's gonna be?
we haven't figured that out yet.
Okay.
Who's gonna determine that?
City council. Pass the buck to them.
So we can't, until that decision is made, and, you know, the requirement that Jim deposit $7,000 for a survey, I don't even know where that came from. I mean, it came from Jennifer, but I don't know where she got that.
City council decided it.
You know, I
I
know,
think
see,
they
that's her
added up.
recommendation.
Yeah, but I think the recommendation added up things like this surveyor and engineers and all the things to see the road and doing some research. I don't know just all where it came from.
Well, it's, you know, completely unnecessary, and it strikes me as it was something to try and discourage, to make the validation petition go away. essentially.
The very first paragraph on that statute states that that's exactly how it
There's no
has to be done.
statute that's applicable to the city. Validation statute applies to the county and the state. There's no law. We're making it up as we go along. In other words, the city has authority to validate a road within the city limits simply by deciding it.
It's my
And-
understanding
and,
the city
resolution,
usually,
You don't know what you're talking about.
it's my understanding the city usually follows suit with the county and the state, am I correct?
You know, to tell you the truth, I think this has come up so rarely where a road validation is necessary within a city that there is no format. And it's probably why there's nothing in the statutes that ties the city to a validation process, just because it's such a rare situation. And so there's nothing, no guideline. I mean, you could use the statute as it applies to the road districts and county and state and say, well, let's just kind of follow this. You could do that, but there's no law that requires a city to follow any particular procedure to validate a public road within the city.
So though you may not like what the city did, it's perfectly legal.
It's perfectly legal.
But what is our ordinance?
But it could be
There
appealed.
isn't any ordinance about validating a road.
They
No,
use the
but
template
there
from the
is an
county.
ordinance, I read somewhere about road standards.
Yes.
There is.
And the
It's
road
just
department-
validation. There's nothing on validation applicable to cities.
But I
State
don't
there
think
is.
the city would consider accepting it if it wasn't up to standard, because that'd mean the rest of the taxpayers. And you can't, a road that's 8 or 9 feet wide is not up to city standards where the residential
Well,
roads have to
the
be.
standards doesn't have anything, does this exist as a public road by virtue of the fact that it has been a public road up to this point, 200 feet south of the section line, based upon the evidence, or not?
Well,
It's,
needs to be researched more to get that evidence, because looking at it,
I researched it thoroughly.
I've researched it pretty good too, and I'm looking at those deeds, you know, when Terry gets his feet, he goes this, I want to get the number of feet, and where the original old deeds that didn't mention county roads, they went up in one movement and then another movement to get there.
Oh my goodness.
They weren't, I mean,
Do you do your own dental work by any chance?
you know, I'm just saying, that it gave me the idea that maybe, just maybe, nobody knows where it was.
Well, that's, you know, that's a legal description in a deed, that's course and distance. and-
That's only the third version of the deed. They have a fourth version of the deed, and then they threw the hands up in the air. That's the fourth, you know.
Well, look, as you said, it's up to the city to decide where Old Main Street ends. And that's really an important decision for the city to make, for a lot of reasons. And I'm not sure how they would come up with the conclusion that it ends at the section line. I've seen no evidence whatsoever that Old Main Street as a public road ends at the section line. But I guess they could arbitrarily make that determination. And if that determination then has an effect on property owners, then they'll have to deal with that.
I remember when I first moved here, when my oldest boy was in preschool, we were going to vacation Bible school, and they went with somebody that took us out there to Marie's to pick their girls up, and there wasn't a good road out there like there is now. We bounced across that field that was all plowed up, and so there wasn't a road, you know, when you get to that what would be the section line now, that was a plowed field
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah.
There's
Well,
easements.
there may be evidence that, you know, it looks like, you know, according to Richard Gross Close, it's been maintained by the city up to that point for many decades.
We
But
also have another
he's lived here a long time.
declaration by
Yeah.
Jeff Lohman, who was mayor for how many years? That says the contrary.
Because the maintenance was a lot of snow plowing, and there's that city, state statute.
Maintenance can be as little as snow plowing. It's simply an indication that it's a public.
It was a courtesy.
Public status, and all snow plowing is a courtesy to the residents of the city. So, yeah, it's a courtesy.
And it does, it also.
So wait a minute, I want to get back to this subdivision, okay? And we're not gonna solve the public road issue at this. So if we present to you, did you have a problem with the road maintenance agreement once the private road is established and private easements are built into this?
Everybody, I feel, should be part of it. Everybody that's property.
I don't know that we can force other property owners. Jim has control over the subdivision parcels. He doesn't have control over other property owners to require them to enter into a road maintenance agreement.
Well, I think you'll find that they'd be quite willing if you talk to.
But I don't know how you can make that a condition. I mean, maybe they will, maybe they won't, I don't know.
I know from when they were at the meetings, they quite were vociferous about the things, they were quite interested in it back then, so.
Can't we just keep this within the subdivision, and that the subdivision lots are required to participate and agree to a road maintenance agreement?
So they're going to wind up having to pay for all the expenses of maintaining the road, and the other people are going to use the road without paying a penny, and if they ever wanted it, the people with those 3 lots, if they didn't want to maintain it.
The problem is we can't force them. We have no legal, we have the legal right to compel these new lot owners to be part of the road maintenance agreement, but we have no legal right to force those other property owners to participate.
What about asking them?
Well, but how can you make that a condition? How can you say, well, if they won't agree to be a part of the road maintenance agreement, the subdivision isn't approved?
Because it isn't fair to anybody if they don't have any say in the road. Because, you have 3 people.
But I can't force them to be part of the road.
Who's owning the road down there?
Huh?
Who's going to be owning the road?
Well, who's gonna be owning the road?
Yes.
Well, as it stands now, the road is owned by Jim. Riverview Drive is owned by
Right.
Jim, subject to an easement. There's a 20-foot wide easement for each of those 3 property owners. That easement ends 200 feet south of the section line. That's the present status. Okay? Looked at it carefully. I'm an expert in real estate law, all right? That's the facts. That's what exists now. Okay?
Agreed.
All right.
My property
So-
line is 295
yes.
feet long.
Yes.
So isn't the current plan to sell the existing parcels to
Yes.
the existing owners? So they would already be subject to the homeowner's road agreement anyway?
Just the new parcels, the new
Right.
1, 2, 3, and 4,
But they-
would all be subject to the road maintenance agreement.
So they're already the existing people
Uncle
that own
Hours
the
would-
property?
Except for Umfenau, you're right.
I thought Uppenauers were buying the lot below,
No.
or are they not?
I thought
Slade.
she was buying
Oh,
it.
is she-
Oh, I see what your question is. Yeah,
So you
they're,
don't even have to ask them because they're already gonna be part of the.
well, I don't know now if they're
they're
still gonna
still-
buy those parcels. The market has changed, that they were willing to before, but I don't know that they are now, to tell you the truth.
Well, they weren't doing it for development, they were doing it because they wanted to keep the area looking agricultural.
Yes.
And so they still will want
For
that.
buffer, you know, but they may still, and they may not, I don't know.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying, is I thought that there wasn't gonna be anybody new out there except the Andersons. And they'd be a new parcel with
They'd
it.
be the one new residence.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, but we have to think about
Yeah,
10
is-
years from now,
Is
you
it the
know.
fact that the amount of land there could be subdivided again? Because you only have to have 1 acre size property out there.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And so you've got 4 lot owners that will be subject to the road maintenance agreement, and we have no way to require those other property owners to be part of the road maintenance agreement. And you're saying, why don't we just ask them and see if they will agree to participate in the road
Yeah.
maintenance agreement? In exchange for an easement perhaps that solves the problem.
something like that.
solves their landlocked problem.
So what if they refuse though?
Yeah, because, well, if you put it that if they get their easement in return for being part of the homeowners, then they're gonna refuse.
But, I mean, he's right, we can't compel those other people
I know.
I think
outside.
we have to just look at this subdivision, we can't say, well, and then we gotta
Yeah,
bring
we're
this guy
reaching
in.
beyond
and
the
that-
boundaries here.
Yeah,
Because if you look at the original way the easement was drawn up, it starts right down there at the edge of Umfenauer's property for the road. So if you went with that, the original prescription, before Terry decided to stick it into the driveway, then that would be part of the road, and so he would be bordering on it. That's what I was thinking. Because the way the deeds all do, they all start down there in the southern part of the
Yeah,
block, and they go up along the property there,
to
the road.
to the end of the county road,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I'm not quite following.
So, excuse me,
You go ahead.
so your issue is that Golding plugged us into Uppenauer's driveway instead of following
The previous
the
description,
property line of Uppenauer's to the other people.
that's part of it, yes. We need to have the 50-foot wide go down to the bottom of the lot.
Down to the last lot,
Not to the last lot, down to the edge of the last lot, the
Right.
southern end.
right?
She's talking about this dog leg that's plugging in.
I'm not a surveyor, and I don't claim to
Yeah.
be, but I know that my
Instead of
property is
going
295 feet long along that western boundary. He says
Help me
that
out.
the easement
So,
stops at the county
so
road
he's got it
200
going
feet
to
short
Uppenauer's
of
property.
Driveway.
the county, or
This
the
is where
boundary.
his driveway is.
If you look where Riverview Drive is labeled right now, it's
And
not
what does she
95
want?
feet from the end of my
For
property.
this dog leg to go away and
It just isn't.
down.
Continue down to, why? Who's this down here?
That would be part of lot 4.
Oh, I see.
All the way to that line there. And Uppenauer's boundary would be is right there.
I see what you mean. But why do you want the road to go down here?
You have to ask her.
Well, for one thing, that's the legal description of it.
The Terry's legal description?
No,
Oh,
not
the-
theirs,
the
that's what
easement.
the deeds, that's what the deeds say. We're
Okay.
supposed to pay attention to what the deed describes, right? That's why
That's
it's,
their private easement, yes.
and it goes right down to the, it goes right down here, the bottom of the line, and then it describes it going up. It does not describe any angle going into somebody's driveway.
Right, but this is a different road than the private easement. So,
Why is it different? This is just what Terry's drawing on there, the Riverview Drive, he decided to put it up somebody's driveway. Instead of driving, showing it, because he's putting this as being an easement, and yes, it turns up there because the person turns into his driveway.
right,
It's not because the easement ends.
why should it be designed differently?
I don't know why they decided to change it from the way it previously was.
So if that's a new map, shouldn't it have to go back to planning and zoning then, since that's not the original
Oh,
plan?
no, this was one similar to what we've had previously.
With the public road
So
overlay?
I don't get it. You want him to change
I want
the
him to
design
follow
so?
the easement on the deed,
Follow the description
yeah,
of
the
the
description.
of the easement on the deed.
So Umfenauer's easement,
Yes, right?
okay.
That's the, that describes it from, it'd been Noreen's before that. It goes down here and then goes straight up. It doesn't wind up in anybody's driveway.
All right. Make note of that. Anything else?
Well, I think we've gone over it quite a lot. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, but no, is there any other issues that, before?
Probably we've covered it. We've covered so much.
I got one more question,
Yes,
one more quick little question. Depending on where the end of Old Main Street is determined would depend on whether or not that new little development that was done for Jim's driveway needs to be engineered and inspected if he makes that into a city road. Or is that out the window now, or what?
I don't have any idea what you mean.
Well, it wouldn't be out the window due to city ordinance.
So, according to the ordinance, the city road has to go to his boundary, Riverview. I guess I'm not sure where. Where would that happen? You see what I'm saying?
No, I got lost someplace.
Okay, as you're driving up my house, the road, to go to our place, Jim, I go up and I go in my driveway, and he goes like this, and he's widened it considerably ways back. If that is determined to be the city road, and that road work has been done to it, doesn't that need to be inspected and engineered?
I should think so. But the city
But
council
if it
would
doesn't
have to
get
decide.
determined to be there, then that wouldn't need to be done, because it's a private road, correct?
The city council will have to decide where
Okay.
the edge is, not us.
Okay.
See, validation simply is, Old Main Street as it exists right now is a public road to a certain point. That doesn't mean, now we have to engineer and make changes to it. That's not what it means at all. It simply means that it has public road status, legal public road status up to a certain point. So there'd be no obligation to do anything to any part of Old Main Street, regardless of where it ends.
What about when it falls in some more? As if it's a private road, the people in the land have to do it. But if it's a public road, then the city would have to repair it and take down the hillside and stuff, right?
Then they wouldn't have to. There's no obligation to maintain. If the city
ordinance-
determined that that road was no longer necessary, they wouldn't have to do
Public
it.
safety, you have residents down there.
Yeah, you
The
do.
ordinance says,
Get out the dump truck.
Well, I mean, yeah.
is it,
Old Main is part of the city's responsibility.
Oh,
Would have to.
Yeah,
Or
Or
it's up to the city to provide an alternative to it. One way or
Yeah,
another, they need to
correct.
provide a road for the people out
Yeah,
there.
if Old Main fell off the hill, which it's trying to do,
yep,
we would have the city who's responsible for
City is
paying to haul in fill or put more
Or to-
pavement on
Or to provide an alternative.
or to provide an alternative. Now, I don't know, I mean, Jerry's already, we could come in from the highway and go up. We could come in
Yeah.
from above and come down,
Yeah.
but I mean, I
So is that really a
Our
a
concern.
thing, the concern that Old Main Street is
Have you
having some
driven on it lately?
problems?
Well, when TDS put their fiber optic cable in, their equipment, and then their drilling, it kind of cleaved off, all the pavement cracked and kind of shifted down, and
Oh,
so now people kind of drive around that little piece.
oh,
You know, I mean, it's
it's
not
capping,
anywhere,
is what it's
but,
doing.
yeah,
You know, like a glacier cast.
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but,
This is one reason why it's so important to have that easement as it is on the deed, right down the end of the property. So we, just in case there's a disaster, we've got that much as a road easement.
But that's private easement,
I
so
know.
it wouldn't do the city any good.
It helps.
there, where it is cities, where the road
the
is,
problem is,
where it's
So we
caving
can road
away.
up to it.
What's that?
And so we could bring a road up to it.
Up to that point. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I see what you mean now. Okay. I get you. That
Yeah, we're
must
not
be
being nitpickers just for the fun of it, we're
some- Okay,
concerned.
well, I really wondered why that jog bothered you and you wanted it to, now I know.
Yeah. I wanna make sure people can get to their houses.
Yeah, well, that makes some sense. I get that.
Well, you're coming in on this rather late. We've had 3 years of this, and you were only on the one property with Cassie Grosclose.
You explained to me you wanted it because that's how the private easement to the Umpenauer property reads.
Yes.
You didn't tell me that's why you wanted it, because someday you may have to connect a public street to that point.
Right.
yeah, it does go through that field and connects to the property next door, which belongs to Uki's. And there's a road, there's an old road that goes down, all the way down that hill already.
Yep.
From up
Road
down.
bed, but
A
not
road
used.
bed, yeah, it's just for
Yeah.
accessing their field.
And it's
But
just
it's
hard to
there.
remember
I
what
see.
you know.
Well, I think that may be part of the
No.
old road bed,
Yeah.
not part of the American Ridge-Julietta Road that
No.
became obsolete.
Or just somebody access to
All
the
right.
field.
I think I've got it.
Okay,
I think I've got what you want, and I'll see if Jim wants to proceed any further with this.
okay.
But he's close to be throwing up his hands and saying, it's your problem now.
Yes.
If these folks are landlocked as a result of Old Main Street ending in section line, that's your problem,
But right here.
Yeah.
okay?
This
Well,
this
you can
comes
always
right
just
here.
write an easement
Yeah,
to
the
the
old
road.
road.
is
Oh, he